The last mile. A truck driver versus racism. The highway was empty, but the clock wasn't. In the back of a truck sat boxes of medicine that could keep a child alive, medicine that had only hours before it turned useless. The driver knew every second mattered. But when flashing lights appeared in his mirror, the road to hope turned into a trap. He wasn't asked what he carried or who it could save. Instead, the question cut deeper. Why are you even here? That one stop could cost a life. The real question is, whose? Marcus Reed had spent most of his adult life behind the wheel of a truck. To him, the endless highways were more than strips of asphalt. They were a living, breathing path of responsibility. 45 years old, with tired eyes and calloused hands, Marcus had hauled everything from furniture to food. But tonight was different. In the chilled compartment behind him were boxes of insulin and emergency supplies, bound for a small-town hospital running out of hope. Somewhere out there, a child's life depended on his delivery. For Marcus, trucking wasn't just a job, it was survival. His daughter, Amaya, was in college, the first in their family to make it that far. Every mile he drove was a step toward her future, a shield against the hardships he had grown up with. The photo of her taped to his dashboard was his compass, reminding him why no storm, no fatigue, and no setback could ever make him stop. The night was heavy with rain, the wipers fighting to keep up, his headlights slicing through sheets of water. The highway signs blurred past, lonely reminders of how far he still had to go. Yet in the silence of the cab, Marcus felt something else, a weight that wasn't from the cargo. He knew this route cut through places where men like him weren't always welcome. Small towns with old grudges. Roads where suspicion ran faster than truth. He pushed those thoughts aside, focusing on the road. What he didn't know was that before this night was over, the miles ahead would test far more than his endurance. They would test his very right to be on the road at all. The storm had grown heavier, but Marcus pushed forward, his eyes locked on the winding road. Every mile mattered. Yet the uneasy feeling that had been gnawing at him earlier returned, sharper now. In small towns like these, he had learned long ago, people didn't need a reason to question a man like him. His very presence was reason enough. At a lonely diner just off the highway, Marcus pulled in for a cup of coffee to keep his focus sharp. Inside, the air was thick with silence. Conversations dipped as he entered. A waitress glanced at him with a stiffness that needed no words. "Kitchen's closed," she muttered, even though the scent of frying bacon still lingered in the air. He didn't argue. He had been through this dance before. But as he left, he caught the sight of a man near the counter whispering into a phone, eyes fixed on Marcus's truck parked outside. Back on the road, the red and blue lights appeared in his mirror. His heart sank. Not because he had done anything wrong, but because he knew exactly how this story often went. He eased his rig to the shoulder, rain hammering against the windshield, and waited. The officer approached slowly, flashlight beam slicing through the rain. Marcus handed over his papers, cargo manifest, and license without hesitation. Everything was in order. Authorized relief shipment, government stamped. But the officer wasn't reading the papers. His eyes lingered on Marcus, heavy with suspicion. That had nothing to do with the cargo. "Step out of the vehicle." The command wasn't about safety checks or protocol. It was about control. Marcus obeyed, standing on the slick roadside as the storm lashed around them. The officer circled the truck, his flashlight pausing on the freezer unit. He ordered it opened. Cold air spilled into the rain as boxes of insulin and medical supplies sat exposed, vulnerable to the rising temperature. Marcus felt a knot tighten in his chest. Every extra minute the doors stayed open meant the medicine inched closer to ruin. Inside, a child's chance at survival was measured in degrees and minutes, not suspicion and pride. He wanted to speak up, to plead for reason, but experience told him his words could easily be twisted into defiance. More flashing lights appeared. Another cruiser, then another. Soon, the quiet highway had become a stage. Curious locals slowed, their cars, some pulling over to watch. Their faces glowed in the rain, half hidden behind wipers and foggy windows. To them, it was entertainment. To Marcus, it was humiliation. The officers spread the boxes across the wet ground, rifling through, them like contraband. Marcus stood cuffed against the side of his rig, powerless to stop them. He could feel the cold metal bite into his wrists, the storm water soaking through his boots. His truck, his lifeline, was reduced to a spectacle. Inside the cab, the temperature. Alarm shrieked. The freezer was climbing. Marcus's heart pounded with every beep. He thought of the child waiting in a hospital bed, time slipping away. And then his phone buzzed in his pocket, vibrating against the steel where his hands were pinned. He knew who it was before he even saw the screen. The hospital. They had been tracking his delivery, counting on him to arrive. If they were calling now, it meant one thing. The child's condition was worsening. Marcus couldn't move, couldn't answer, could only stand in the rain as the lifeline he carried slipped closer to being lost. And in that moment, it became clear. This wasn't just about suspicion. It was about whether prejudice would be stronger than a child's right to live. Night had reached its breaking point. Marcus's hands gripped the steering wheel, knuckles white, as the flashing blue and red lights bathed the road in cruel rhythm. The officers had wasted precious minutes, searching his truck, sneering at his ID, doubting every word he said. And now, as he tried to explain once more about the life-saving medicine, one of them simply crossed his arms and muttered, "Not my problem." The cooler in the back was losing its chill. Every degree meant a child's chance slipping away. Marcus could almost hear the faint hum of the hospital monitor, though he was still miles away. Each second felt like sand falling through his fingers. Then came the moment that shattered him. One officer deliberately kicked the cooler door shut, shaking his head as if the medicine were trash. The metallic clang echoed in the night air, and with it, Marcus felt a surge of helpless rage. He wanted to scream, to fight, to tear through the blockade with his bare hands, but all he could do was stand there, watched, measured, judged. Not as a man, not as a driver on a mission, but as something less. The silence between them was suffocating. His chest burned with a mix of fury and despair. Was this how it would end? Not with broken wheels or an empty tank, but with prejudice holding the clock hostage? And then, through the darkness, a sound tore the night open. A phone rang. The call was from the hospital. A voice, trembling, begged him to hurry. The child's condition was deteriorating fast. Marcus's heart pounded as the officer hung up, unbothered, shrugging like it meant nothing. In that single moment, Marcus realized this was no longer about rules or cargo checks or excuses. This was about survival, and the ugly truth standing in his way. And as he stepped back into his truck, one thought seared into his mind. If he didn't find a way to break through this barrier, the last mile might never be reached. Marcus finally pressed the gas, his truck roaring back to life, carrying with it both the fading chill of the medicine and the weight of the night's injustice. He reached the hospital. Late, but not too late. The child survived, though the doctors admitted the delay had pushed them to the edge. Relief washed over Marcus, but it was laced with something darker. Because he knew the real danger that night hadn't been the ticking clock or the miles of empty road. It had been the color of his skin. As he sat in the parking lot, the adrenaline fading, Marcus realized the medicine wasn't the only thing nearly lost. His dignity had been crushed, his humanity questioned, his every breath treated as suspect. He had done nothing wrong, yet he was forced to prove his innocence while a life hung in the balance. That night didn't just change him, It carved itself into his soul. He went back to driving, but every flashing light in the mirror carried a shadow of fear. Every stop felt heavier, not because of the load, but because of the memory of being judged before being heard. But here's the truth. Marcus's story is not just his. It belongs to countless others, men and women who carry the weight of survival alongside the weight of prejudice. They fight not only for their jobs, their families, their futures, but for something far more basic, the right to be seen as human. So ask yourself, how many more last miles will be stolen, delayed, or denied because of racism? How many more? Lives put at risk, not by fate, but by hate. Until the barriers of prejudice are torn down, every journey like Marcus's is a reminder. The road is never just about miles. It's about justice. Like and subscribe for more.